One set of policies is that you really have to have a hiring process of teachers. You have to have a level of professional development. You have to look at not constant testing, but really creating the kind of intellectual environment in a school where, in fact, teachers are working with each other, exchanging with students, talking with parents, and helping people to know what are the critical skills that kids need to be acquiring in grades 1, 2, and 3 in order to be on track. I'm saying this because none of this kind of depth of practice was happening at a sufficient level in low-performing schools, primarily in urban and rural communities. So we had to look also at the members of our network to see, in fact, where are these 77 organizations? How many of them are actually high-performing? How many of them are using those 5 skill areas? And what are we going to do about helping those organizations to leap forward and really move to a higher level of performance so that their outcomes that they're working with their districts do it? The other thing that we saw in these organizations was leadership mattered, governance mattered. The critical thing was every organization needed to have a strategic plan. Was not happening. So we needed to make sure that those kinds of things are happening. So what I'm saying is that this first stage of impact is making sure that the groups that you are working with have the competency and capacity to, in fact, change outcomes. So that was one set of things. The second set of things that we had to look at was if our goal is to increase the high school completion rate where students are able to be college and career ready, what metrics are we going to hold ourselves accountable for? So we created a set of metrics. We worked with researchers, and we created a set of metrics of roughly about 7. And we know that our scorecard is somewhat ahead of the where a lot of school districts are. In fact, a lot of them don't have the data in this way. But we wanted to really make it clear, shifting back and forth here, we wanted to make it clear that, in fact, this is the language that the district should be communicating to the public about and communicating to their individual teachers about. So here we go. So this scorecard has 7 indicators on it. 4 of those indicators have to do with student achievement, and 3 of those indicators have to do with public engagement. Because at the end of the day, it is going to be public that is going to take it to a high level of practice and accountability. So first we wanted to know, well, actually, how many low-income students are you getting out in the requisite time from 9th grade to 12th grade? We wanted to be able to look at the increases of numbers of students who are actually on track. So what are you doing to get those lower grades on track? And then we wanted to be able to say, okay, well, course taking is very important. If kids don't take the STEM courses and the other kinds of courses that they need, they can graduate, but they won't be able to enter into college because they won't have the sets of requisite courses that they need in order to do so. So we looked at a set of those. We looked at a set of what do we need to know from the public? Who is committed in your school district and outside of your school district? What are the partnerships that exist? And so each year now, when we adopted the strategic plan in 2010, each year we are now collecting data from all of those organizations about these things so that we can begin to look at what is actually happening in terms of the increase. Are the strategies that we propose, reading by 3rd grade, course taking, professional development for teachers, using research-driven strategies, is that actually making a difference? It was sluggish in getting people to respond to it, particularly in terms of these data. One of the reasons why it was sluggish is because districts are not actually collecting data in that manner, and they can't always tell you. So we had to create substitute metrics. If you can't find this, look for that. But the bottom line was that we were in an environment in which the districts were not gathering information and using it, and therefore our local education funds, JR known as, couldn't do it. But we had local education funds within the network, such as Strive, such as New Visions, that were actually engaging communities and working their way through not only these sets of metrics, but also helping communities to take that next step. So we went back and we began to look at the practice of what those organizations were doing. A few weeks ago, at the beginning of November, we decided, how can we create a kind of momentum among these organizations to be engaged in this? And so we have created a College and Career Ready Compact. And that College and Career Ready Compact essentially says, over the next 2 years, we will graduate and put on track 100,000 students across 33 local education funds. Those 33 are the 33 who really have demonstrated that they are getting and making a difference in their districts. Those 33 are the ones that contain the groups of organizations that in fact are making a difference. So an example, Strive has really done a cradle to college engagement strategy. And so using that kind of model makes a difference. So they're part of that 33. And we are now concentrating on that 33. So there's the goal. We've outlined with each of those organizations what percentage increase they need to have. So I'll say that. The other that we have done is we are now in the process of designing technical support teams. Because if you set the goal and you want people to reach that goal, then you have to be able to be clear about and articulate what the numbers need to be year by year in order to reach the outcome of 100,000 students. And finally, you need to be able to say to people, here's some real support for how to do this, how to make it happen. So we are now composing 5 technical support teams that will work around the 3 models in our network that have proven to be the most effective and that have gotten the outcomes. And that we're also developed 2 more technical support teams. One solely around data that can work with that local education fund and their district, and also organizational development, because we know that an organization's capacity and competency as an organization has everything to do with whether or not they can execute. So Bridgespan is going to be our partner in working on this organizational development issues of really putting governance together and improving the effectiveness of the organization. I raise this as a collective impact model because there are stages to getting to collective impact. One is building competency within your own organization. The other is setting standards. The third is identifying sets of metrics that you will actually achieve. And if you're not achieving them, it drives the discourse by having a common set of metrics. Because everybody's talking about, well, what happened? Why didn't we get there? What is the research that's there? So that we are able to do that. And then finally, at the end of the day, it allows us to bring and generate research and develop a research agenda that is driven by what is going on in schools and in communities rather than being driven by researchers observing schools and communities, which we think will be will have a better and a different type of impact. We expect to be able by 2013 to report out on this goal. We've done all of the metrics, and we should be at well over 100,000 students. But I've laid this out mainly because what I would say is that it's very hard for communities to think of their work beyond their door. So regionalism is a pretty hard concept for people in communities to deal with. They have an identity, and they want that identity to be recognized as part of their solution to solving a problem. What we have been able to do with the local education funds is in fact help them to see that their individual advancement actually rests with the collective advancement of the group. That they're better off struggling to identify a problem and solve a problem together. And they can, in fact, have benefits of raising more money by being able to say, well, Strive and New Visions are the same type of organization we are, and this is what they have done. And therefore, Community Foundation X, you should invest in us because we are the same type of vehicle, and this is the kind of work that we can do. Having the metrics is able to help them a great deal. So identity and metrics make a difference. And their localism matters in their community because these are people who their community sees in the grocery store. They see them working for the passage of bond measures. So there's a local identity, and then being able to use their peers as well as their partnership organizations to create a much more cohesive and a collective model of impact. Has been, and we'll be working through this and producing research, but we think it will make a big difference. But the biggest hurdle has been getting over local. I think it's easier for corporations and foundations and national entities to do that kind of collaboration because they're set up to do it. But local, non-governmental organizations, for the most part, are set up by those local communities to respond to those local communities, and therefore that challenge of really working across and collectively is one that we have found that we have constantly had to pay attention to. So thank you very much.